A developing tropical low in the Coral Sea, heavy rainfall concerns across northern Queensland, multiple systems to track over the next fortnight. That is what we were looking at as we head towards Australia Day. Right now, across northern Queensland, conditions are varied. Mount Carbine sitting at 34 degrees with 80% humidity, absolutely stifling. Up in Townsville, overcast conditions, Cairns dealing with intense heat. Meanwhile, down in Launceston, bone dry. Haven has seen decent rain in ages. That contrast is about to shift as several weather systems develop across northern Australia. I've examined the latest from the Bureau of Meteorology, looked at the Access model, the GFS and the European model. There is agreement on the broad pattern, but some significant uncertainty about specific details. Worth taking the time to understand what is developing, because if you are in northern Queensland or the Northern Territory, the next 10 days will bring substantial rainfall. Let's start with what is happening right now. The remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji are still active. You wouldn't believe it, a couple of days after that powerful landfall on the central Queensland coast, this system S still causing problems. Currently sitting about 150 kilometres north of Mount Isa, tracking northwest. Throughout today, Northwestern Queensland has copped periods of heavy rainfall. Nothing catastrophic. We haven't seen the 150 millimetre plus accumulations that would cause immediate alarm. But several spots have picked up 30 to 80 millimetres from slow-moving persistent thunderstorms. As I am looking at the latest data, a new round of these storms is pushing through the Mount Isa area. Here is the concern. Northwestern Queensland has already seen significant rainfall in the last 2 weeks. Since Boxing Day, flooding has been widespread across this region. The ground is saturated, rivers are swollen, creek systems are at capacity. Even small amounts of additional rainfall will exacerbate flooding that's already occurring. If we look at the webcam footage from Blackwater Reservoir, you can see the scale of water movement through central Queensland. There is a road that runs underneath where you're re-seeing water now completely submerged. A Land Cruiser 100 series drove through there 2 days ago when water levels were manageable. Now it's entirely underwater. That gives you an idea of how much water is moving through this part of the state. Up at Normanton, the situation is similar. Water levels across northwestern Queensland are finally starting to drop. You can see a bit more of the flood marker compared to 24 hours ago. Low tides in the Gulf of Carpentaria are helping drain some of the flood water. That is good news. But when you've got this much water on the ground, another 50 millimetres puts you right back to major flood levels without warning. Over near Rockhampton, they've had more than enough rain. 185 millimetres over the past 4 days in South Gladstone. The Calliope River had significant fresh water coming down. That S eased back now to no flood warning, which is positive, but the humidity S been brutal. That S typical when you've got this much moisture in the atmosphere. The forecast for the next couple of days shows Koji S remnants will continue dragging moisture from the Gulf of Carpentaria. A few showers around the Flinders and Norman River catchments tonight into tomorrow morning. Central Queensland, particularly the coast and the Whitsundays, will see shower and thunderstorm activity continue. By Friday, this rainfall should clear towards the Northern Territory. Saturday and Sunday, we're re-looking at rainfall becoming strictly coastal based across Queensland. That's the short-term situation. Now let's talk about what is developing further out, because there are multiple areas of interest that need attention. Out in the Coral Sea, tropical low 14U is positioned well to the northeast of Queensland, about 1,500 kilometres offshore from Rockhampton. Currently tracking northeast, which means by this weekend it'll be near Vanuatu before turning back towards New Caledonia. Between Monday the 19th and Wednesday the 21st of January, this system will likely intensify into a weak tropical cyclone. New Caledonia could see significant impacts with heavy rainfall, but for Queensland, this system poses no direct threat. It'll remain very far offshore. The reason it is staying offshore relates to the upper level winds. The jet stream is still blowing quite strong through the middle parts of Australia. It has weakened a bit over Queensland, which is why systems can sink further south into the Coral Sea. That S, why we saw Cyclone Koji come so far south for this time of year. Typically, Queensland tropical cyclones are a risk from about February onwards. Seeing a cyclone impact areas outside far northern Queensland in January is unusual. Koji was definitely interesting in that regard. Many of you remember significant January cyclones. But the pattern this year is different. The jet stream position means systems that do develop are more likely to curve away rather than make landfall. That tropical low 14U is a perfect example. Track forecast shows it heading towards New Caledonia, not Queensland. Now here, S, where it gets more complex. As we head towards Australia Day and into the last week of January, multiple weather systems are likely to develop. The monsoon trough is becoming active. That means increased rainfall across northern Australia. The models are showing 3 potential areas of development. First, another system in the Coral Sea. Between the 20th and 25th of January, conditions favour a tropical low developing somewhere to the northeast of Queensland. This 1S different from 14U. This would be a fresh development, likely closer to the Queensland coast. Current modelling suggests that 1T reach tropical cyclone intensity, more likely a broad monsoonal low or a rainfall depression, but it would bring significant rainfall to pockets of northern and far northern Queensland. For those in far north Queensland who felt isolated during the lead up to the last cyclone, this system warrants attention. Not because it is forecast to be a severe tropical cyclone, but because the rainfall could be substantial. And if you are already dealing with saturated ground or swollen creek systems, additional heavy rainfall creates problems quickly. The good news is no forecast model is showing strong tropical cyclone development across northern Queensland through the remainder of January. Those in Cairns, Townsville and areas further south are not under any tropical cyclone alert or notice. Rainfall, yes. Tropical cyclone impacts unlikely. Second area to watch, the remnants of Koji itself. This system is tracking towards the Northern Territory and will interact with the monsoon trough around Darwin this weekend. When that happens, we're re-looking at potentially massive rainfall accumulations. The European model is showing some pockets between the Adelaide River, Bachelor and south of Darwin picking up 600 to 700 millimetres over 4 days. Darwin can cope with heavy rainfall. 500 millimetres in a couple of days is well within the capacity of infrastructure up there. But it does mean flooding is likely in some areas. Flood watches will probably be issued. The top end knows how to handle the wet season, but this will be significant. What makes Koji interesting is what happens after it reaches the Northern Territory. The system is forecast to stall around Darwin for a couple of days, Saturday, Sunday, maybe Monday. Then it has options. It could head west into the Indian Ocean, or it could make a U-turn back towards Queensland and the Gulf of Carpentaria. This is where forecast uncertainty increases. The steering flow right now, given how strong the monsoon is bursting, would more likely take this system from the top end back towards Queensland. If that happens, the Gulf of Carpentaria region could see another round of heavy rainfall. But the models aren't in agreement. Some show it tracking west, some show it looping back east. We want to know with confidence until later this week. The third area, Western Australia. A tropical low is likely to develop near the WA border around the same time frame, late January. This is separate from Koji. This would be a fresh system developing in the monsoon trough. Again, not forecast to reach tropical cyclone intensity at this stage, but capable of producing substantial rainfall. So to summarise the long-range outlook, 3 separate systems developing, one in the Coral Sea between the 20th and 25th, one possibly redeveloping from Koji-S remnants, either in the Indian Ocean or back towards Queensland, one near Western Australia. All 3 are forecast to be rainfall producers rather than tropical cyclones. Now you might be wondering, with all this tropical activity, are we going to see another cyclone in the next couple of weeks? The honest answer is the forecast modelling isn't favouring tropical cyclone chances. When you've got a very strong monsoon like we're seeing now, you typically get a rainfall threat rather than well-defined tropical cyclones. The monsoon spreads out the energy across a broad area instead of concentrating it into a compact, rotating system. That said, monsoon troughs and monsoon lows can sometimes strengthen into tropical cyclones. It's definitely a possibility I'll be keeping close tabs on, particularly as we head into February. There are some signals in the long-range models showing potential Coral Sea activity in early February that could affect Queensland. We're relooking very long range, so things will change. But February historically is when Queensland SE's cyclone risk increases significantly. For those keeping score, we're currently in the peak of cyclone season. November to April, January and February typically see the most activity, so heightened vigilance is warranted, even if the immediate forecast doesn't show cyclone development. Right, let's talk about practical considerations based on what S forecast. If you're in Northwestern Queensland around Mount Isa, the Flinders region, Normanton area, monitor river levels closely over the next few days. Even though Koji-S remnants are moving away, residual showers could push already high rivers back into flood. Have your emergency kit ready. Know your evacuation routes if you were in a flood-prone area. If you've got livestock, make sure they on high ground if possible. Central Queensland, particularly around Rockhampton and Gladstone, you've copped a lot of rain already. The immediate rainfall threat is easing, but stay alert for thunderstorms over the next couple of days. Some of these could produce localised heavy falls. Creek crossings that look passable in the morning might be impassable by afternoon if storms develop upstream. If it's flooded, forget it. That SES advice has saved countless lives. Far North Queensland, from Cairns North and inland to the Tablelands, the immediate threat is heat and humidity rather than heavy rainfall. 34 degrees at Mount Carbine with 80% humidity is borderline dangerous. Stay hydrated, limit outdoor work during peak heat. Check on elderly neighbours and mates. As we move towards the end of January, rainfall will increase. Keep an eye on forecasts. If a monsoon low does develop in the Coral Sea, you'll have several days warning before significant rainfall arrives. Townsville and the North Queensland coast, similar story. Current conditions are manageable, overcast, humid but not extreme. The forecast change towards Australia Day means potential heavy rainfall is about a week away. Use that time to prepare. Clear gutters, check your property drainage, make sure your emergency supplies are current, batteries, torches, radio, first aid kit, adequate food and water for several days. For those waiting for rain, particularly down in Logan City and other southeast Queensland areas that have been dry. Unfortunately, this tropical activity is focused much further north. The systems developing are unlikely to bring significant rainfall to areas south of about Bundaberg. You'll see some shower activity associated with the broader moisture flow, but the heavy rainfall will be concentrated across the tropics. Northern Territory, particularly around Darwin, this weekend brings heavy rainfall, 100 millimetres minimum, possibly much more depending on where Koji remnants track. If you are in Darwin or surrounds, prepare for several days of wet weather. The build-up has been intense this year. When the monsoon properly establishes, it can be relentless. Make sure your yard is clear of items that could be damaged by heavy rain or blown around by strong winds. Secure loose items. Check that roof gutters are clear. For the Kimberley region in Western Australia, there is potential for heavy rainfall late January if systems develop as forecast. Keep monitoring updates. The wet season up there can produce massive rainfall totals quickly, and road access can be cut for extended periods. One thing I want to emphasise, while we're not forecasting tropical cyclone impacts for most areas over the next 10 days, heavy rainfall alone can be dangerous. You don't need cyclone force winds to cause problems. Flooding from heavy rainfall can be just as destructive. Some of you remember the 2011 Queensland floods, Toowoomba, Brisbane. That wasn't from a cyclone. That was from sustained heavy rainfall in a monsoon pattern, similar to what we're seeing develop now. I am not suggesting we're heading for a repeat of 2011. The pattern is different. But it's a reminder that heavy rainfall demands respect, regardless of whether there is a cyclone name attached to it. The other consideration is the cumulative effect. Areas that have already seen significant rainfall have saturated ground. Riverine flooding takes time to develop, but once rivers are high, they are slow to drop. If you were in an area that has already experienced flooding over the past 2 weeks, additional rainfall has a much greater impact than the same rainfall would have on dry ground. For those with property along creek lines or in flood-prone areas, now is the time to review your plans. Not when the forecast shows heavy rainfall arriving in 12 hours. Know where you'll go if you need to evacuate. Have important documents in waterproof containers that you can grab quickly. Have a bag packed with essentials. These simple preparations make an enormous difference if conditions deteriorate rapidly. Looking at the broader picture, this active monsoon pattern is likely to continue through the remainder of January and into February. That's typical for this time of year, but the intensity of the monsoon this year is notable. Sea surface temperatures across northern Australia are warm, which provides fuel for these systems. The monsoon trough is positioned favourably for bringing moisture on shore, and the upper level pattern supports low pressure development rather than blocking it. What that means practically is we should expect continued unsettled weather across northern Australia for the foreseeable future. Periods of heavy rainfall, potential for multiple tropical lows to develop. The chance of a tropical cyclone increases as we move into February. For those in northern Australia, this is your reality for the next several weeks. It's not about panicking, it's about being prepared and staying informed. The forecast models are in reasonable agreement about the broad pattern. Where they diverge is in the specific details. Exactly where Koji S remnants will track after reaching the Northern Territory, exactly where that late January Coral Sea low will develop and how strong it will become, exactly how much rainfall specific locations will receive. Those details will become clearer over the next few days as we get closer to the events. This is why it's important to check updates regularly if you are in affected areas. A forecast that shows a system tracking west on Wednesday might show it tracking east by Friday. That S, not because forecasters got it wrong. It S because the atmosphere is complex and small changes in steering currents can produce large changes in system tracks. For those interested in the meteorology, what we are seeing is a textbook active monsoon pattern. The monsoon trough is well established across northern Australia. You can see it clearly on the synoptic charts as a band of low pressure stretching from the Indian Ocean across the top end and into the Coral Sea. Within that trough, multiple areas of convergence are developing where winds meet and air is forced upward. That S, where you get the heavy rainfall and where tropical lows can form. The jet stream position is crucial. When at S further south, like it is now, it acts as a barrier preventing tropical systems from tracking too far south, but it also weakens over certain areas, creating windows where systems can slip through. That S, what happened with Koji. The jet stream weakened enough over Queensland to allow the system to track further south than usual for January. As we head into February, climatology suggests the jet stream typically retreats further south. That opens up more of the Queensland coast to potential tropical cyclone impacts. Combined with the active monsoon, February is shaping up as a month that will require close attention. Right, I've covered a lot of information. Let me bring it together. Immediate situation, Northwestern Queensland continues dealing with flooding. Koji S remnants moving away, which is good news, but residual showers possible over the next day or two. Central Queensland rainfall easing. Far North Queensland hot and humid, but not facing imminent heavy rainfall. This weekend, Northern Territory, particularly Darwin region, expecting heavy rainfall as Koji S remnants interact with the monsoon trough. 100 millimetres minimum, possibly much more. Flooding likely in some areas. Next week leading to Australia Day, multiple systems likely developing. Coral Sea tropical low possible, but not forecast to reach tropical cyclone intensity. Broad monsoon, low activity across northern Queensland could bring significant rainfall to far north Queensland and possibly the North Queensland coast. Western Australia also likely to see tropical low development. Koji S remnants could redevelop but track uncertain, either Indian Ocean or back towards Queensland Gulf region. Long range into February, signals for increased tropical activity in the Coral Sea, potential for Queensland tropical cyclone impacts, models showing interest in early February, but we're looking too far ahead for specifics. The key message, if you are in Northern Australia, be prepared for continued unsettled weather. Heavy rainfall is the primary concern over the next fortnight, not tropical cyclones. But as we move into February, cyclone risk increases. Stay informed. Monitor Bureau of Meteorology warnings. Have your emergency plans ready. For the rest of the country, this tropical activity is confined to the far north. Southern states want to see impacts from these systems. In fact, if you are in Tasmania still waiting for rain, or in southeast Queensland hoping for decent falls to fill the dams, this pattern won't help you. The moisture and rainfall are locked into the tropics. That is the situation as it stands. Significant uncertainty remains about specific details, particularly regarding Koji S remnants and exactly where late January systems will develop. Those details will firm up over the coming days. But the broad pattern is clear. Active monsoon, multiple areas of tropical low development, heavy rainfall across northern Australia through the remainder of January. If you are in an affected area, take this forecast seriously without panicking. Prepare now while you have time. Don't wait until the system is 12 hours away to start thinking about what you'll do. That S, when roads are already flooded, shops are sold out of essentials and you are scrambling. Preparation done calmly a week ahead is far more effective than panic preparation the day before. One final note, if you are feeling isolated or anxious about these weather developments, particularly if you are in a remote area, reach out to neighbours and mates. Weather like this is easier to deal with when you're not facing it alone. Check in with people, share information, look after each other. That is what gets communities through difficult weather, not just the forecast, but people looking out for one another. That is the detailed outlook for Northern Australia through to Australia Day and beyond. Heavy rainfall coming, multiple systems developing, no immediate tropical cyclone threat, but February brings increased risk. Stay informed.